Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday morning. So excited to be with you for our 9-minute Monday, and hope your week is off to a great start already. I have a week at home, a week working at home, which is always a good time to catch up and connect with some of the different folks that I get to work with throughout the week. So looking forward to the week ahead. And today I want to talk about a subject that I'm hearing from a lot of you about leadership, and specifically leading peers. In fact, I got a couple of questions from a few of you that we're going to kind of build our conversation around today. So from Ben, he asked the question, he said, I've just been moved into a leadership position and now oversee people that I cut some of this off. So he said, and now oversee people that I used to be a peer with. How do I build trust and help distinguish myself as their leader and not a peer? I think some of us have been in those situations before, right? Where we were peers with others on the team, and then we got promoted into the position of leadership. So now we sit in a position of leadership with people who used to be our peers. So what does that look like? And then from Allie, she asked, what do we mean by horizontal leadership, or sometimes referred to as lateral leadership? And so I want to talk for a minute about this idea of peer-to-peer leadership and how we really lead well with the people that are really peers and we don't have a position of authority over. Because I think, and actually I really believe that this is where some of our best leadership is worked out, is in the peer-to-peer environment. I think a lot of times we wait until positions of authority or leadership, and I know this was true of me in my early days of leadership, that I thought, well, when I get promoted to this position of leadership, then I will be able to lead. Then I will have everything I need to lead well. When in actuality, when that happened to me, I totally botched my leadership moment when I was put into a position of leadership because I hadn't really figured out what it means to lead well in a peer-to-peer context. I don't think I had the skills that helped me lead well when I actually had a position of leadership. So when I'm talking to a lot of leaders, I really encourage you, be intentional about figuring out how to have leadership influence with your peers, because when you can unlock that and understand what it means to lead with your peers, then that is going to give you such extraordinary skills to learn to lead better when you're leading a team of people that you actually have a position of authority over. So I want to dive into that today. I want to kind of look at that and give you a few suggestions and tips for how to lead well when you're leading peer-to-peer. Now, here's why I think this is so important. If you spent time with me, you know that I really believe that leadership begins with influence. Right? That to understand leadership, we have to understand what influence means. And the word influence, by definition, actually means the power to change or affect someone. Now, let that sink in for a minute. The power to change or affect someone. That's a big deal, right? That we have the power to change or affect someone is really, really significant. And I think it's incredibly important for us to understand the weight of leadership then, the responsibility of influence, that we have to really recognize that if we want this leadership, we've got to know what that means. And that means that we have the power to change or affect others. So I think it needs to be held with just a real care and intentionality to say, you know what, if I have the power to change or affect others, then I want to know what it means to lead well and to influence others well. And some of the safest space is really learning to do this with your peers. And what it hinges on is it really hinges on relational authority. In my book, The Four Dimensions, we talk about leading from heart, soul, mind, and strength. And this is the heart side, which I think really is the starting point of leadership. That heart is that relational dimension of leadership where we're really building relationship before we step into positions of authority. And again, in a peer-to-peer context, this is really important, that you're really building relationships and creating connection with the people that you're leading alongside, because that relational authority, as you earn influence through relationships, that's going to give you the opportunity to influence and lead those that are in a peer relationship with you. So I really think that peer-to-peer leadership is where we work out our leadership influence. Like, it is such a perfect space to figure out what it means to lead well. So for those of you that are eager for more responsibility of leadership, I want to encourage you, dig in right now to the peer-to-peer relationships, because these are going to be a gold mine for you to work out your leadership gifts. So let me give you a few tips of how to lead well when you're leading your peers. And I should say this, I mean, because a lot of us find ourselves in places where, we might have more insight or experience that we need to bring to peers. And so this is where we need that leadership influence to help kind of guide a project or guide an initiative that maybe we have a little bit more experience in, but our position of leadership doesn't put us as the authority on the subject. So we have to earn that influence. So here's how you do it. So that when you need to lead well with your peers and you need to offer that influence and that leadership, you've earned the right to do it. And the first one is this idea of giving respect. And this is such a common word or a common thing, but yet I feel like we kind of lose the art of respect. And respect is earned by just kind of the behind the scenes, in the trenches kind of things, like being consistent. Doing what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it. And especially with peers, because a lot of times with our peers, we can kind of fudge on a deadline, or we can be a little slow to respond. Like, we'll be quick to respond to our bosses or to other authority figures. But when it comes to our peers, sometimes we let things slide a little bit. And that actually erodes your influence with them rather than earning your influence and their respect. So be consistent, be dependable, be accountable. So if you're working on a project together, be the person that the rest of the team can count on to get things done. Because when you do that, you are earning the respect of your peers, and you will have a voice with them when you really need to influence and lead through an initiative. And the last thing I would say on the respect piece is to be interested. To be interested in your coworkers and to understand how they work, how they're wired. If your organization uses different personality assessments, maybe Myers-Briggs or DISC or Enneagram, there's a slew of different right path, different personality assessments that your organization might use. Be interested in knowing and understanding the personality type of your coworkers, because it's going to give you insight into who they are, how they think, how they're wired, and to really see things from their perspective. There's a Stephen Covey 7 Habits principle that says, seek to first understand. And so when you can use that posture as you're engaging your peers, seeking first to understand them, to understand their perspective, what they value, what's significant to them, then you're going to earn their respect. And you're going to earn the right to be able to speak into it or lead through it. So in this idea of leading with our peers, the first one is giving respect. And also with that, as you give respect, you're earning respect, and that creates that credibility and that opportunity to lead, right? The second thing I would say on this point of leading our peers is to combat silos, don't create them. And I suspect you understand what I mean about silos. And basically, a lot of times in our organizations, we can kind of hunker down in our specific area, our ministry, our department, and kind of be the bulldog for our area of responsibility. And we can do that kind of with blinders on to what's going on in the rest of the organization. And I want to encourage you that you need to be intentional to not be so, you obviously want to be a champion for your division or your department, your ministry area. You want to be a champion for that, but you can't do that to the exclusion of everyone else and what's going on in their world. So a great leader has perspective of everything that's going on in the organization, how your team or how your role fits into that, but has an eye on how everybody is impacted by what you're doing. And so combat silos, don't create them. Remember that at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, so don't be territorial. You want to really think through, what are the things that will make me a great teammate, and be that for your team members, right? What kind of teammate do you want to work with? That's the teammate you want to be for the people that you lead alongside. And then the third thing that I would say is super critical to leading our peers is communicate clearly. Communication, clarity. Like, those things are so incredibly valuable for you as you're leading with your peers. Communicate clearly, share information, make sure that they know what they need to know. If there's something that you're doing or something that your team is doing that impacts some of your peers, make sure you're intentional to communicate it so that they don't find out about it from somebody else and they're frustrated because it kind of hijacks something that they were doing, or, just, you know how these things happen. It's like something that one team does over here can have an effect on another team over here. And if we weren't communicating clearly and promptly, we can actually kind of mess up what this other teammate is doing. So share information, have the difficult conversation. So in this communication piece, it's not only communicating the things that they just need to know, it's also being able to have the hard conversations. And when we talk about this peer-to-peer relationship, this idea of earning influence, earning respect, when we can say the hard thing with an attitude of care and a desire to learn, to seek to understand, then we're going to build that relationship as well. And also in that space, in the communication space, be intentional. There's 3 questions that I often challenge myself to lead by. And I have to also note to you guys, this is one of the biggest challenges for me as a leader, the communication piece. Because I am moving fast, I'm usually doing a zillion things at once. You can ask anyone on the Foresight team. I can fail to communicate information that impacts what they're doing. And it totally messes up my team. And I have to often come back and apologize for that, because it's not a desire to exclude them. It's often that I'm moving so fast that I will forget that there's something important that they need to know. So I try to remember these 3 questions. Who needs to know? What do they need to know? And when do they need to know it? Because when I'm working on something, there are other people that are going to be affected by it. None of us work completely in silos. Even if you're a solo entrepreneur, there are other people that are impacted by the work you do. So who needs to know? When do they need to know? Like, is there an urgency behind that communication because it affects something else that they're working on? And when do they need to know it? So just be intentional about that communication piece so that you're intentionally letting others know. And this is one of those ways that we really show honor and respect to the people that we work with, is by being intentional with them. There, from Philippians 2, verse 3, the verse says, when you do things, don't let selfishness or pride be your guide. Instead, be humble and give more honor to others than to yourselves. Give more honor to others than to yourselves. And I think that's just kind of a great guiding principle in this peer-to-peer leadership thing, right? We don't have the position of authority, but we want to earn that influence. We want to earn the right to speak into and lead through initiatives with our peers. And you never know when this is going to happen, right? You never know when you might get tasked with leading through a project that's going to impact a lot of your peers, and you're going to need that respect and influence in order to lead through it. So if you haven't been intentional along the way to build, earn their respect, to be intentional to create unity, not create silos, but create unity, and to communicate clearly. Like, if you do those 3 things, you're going to have built that foundation, and you're going to earn that equity to lead when you really need to lead peer-to-peer. So I hope that was super helpful. I think the thing that I want you to remember about all of this when we're talking leadership is that at the end of the day, leadership isn't about us. Even in a peer-to-peer situation where you don't have a position of authority, but you have that relational influence with others, leadership isn't about us, it's about others. It's an act of loving and serving others and considering them ahead of ourselves. And when we take that posture, we earn the influence to lead, and to lead in those moments when it matters the most. So as you go about your week this week, I want you to think about, how can you be intentional to respect your coworkers? How can you build unity rather than build silos? And how can you communicate clearly to earn influence, to build relationship, and to create those opportunities for leadership? So keep leading well this week. We'll see you next week. Send us your questions. Post those in the comments. We want to hear them so that we can respond to the things that you're navigating week in and week out. And keep leading well. We'll see you next week.